What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Blue River Bow Hunting Podcast, episode 50. It's crazy to think I've done 50 episodes of this podcast. I've had some really cool people on, had really cool people in here hosting with me. But for episode 50, got something pretty cool lined up tonight with Kaleb Goss from down south of me in the Tennessee area. But how's it going, buddy?
Hey, man, it's going good. What about you?
Not too bad. It kind of sucks. I'm tagged out in Indiana. I haven't been in the whitetail woods in like a week and a half. I'm having withdrawals. I need to get behind a camera from somebody or for somebody and figure something out. I'm having whitetail withdrawals pretty bad.
I'm right there with you. That's the curse of killing them early.
Absolutely.
Watch everybody else.
So anybody that doesn't know the Appalachian assassin, Kaleb Goss, introduce yourself a little bit.
I'm Kaleb Goss. I'm from Crossville, Tennessee. I've grown up here my whole life. I don't think I've wasted a day and not been in the woods. I was fortunate enough to grow up somewhere where I could romp around every day of the week. And there's not anything I don't chase. I don't claim to be an expert on any of it. I just know enough to be dangerous about all.
All right.
You know what I mean?
You're right. So I kind of start the podcast out the same way with every guest that I have on. Tell us how you got started in hunting in the outdoors.
Oh, involuntarily, of course. I was, 4 years old. I was drugged to the woods with Dad, and I accidentally liked it a lot. I was actually telling somebody today, I think my very first conscious memory that I can go back to is in the tent with Dad with coyotes ripping right outside in our gut piles.
Oh, that's awesome.
In deer camp, I was 4 years old, and they woke me up before they woke him up, and I roused him up or whatever, and I didn't know what it was, but I knew I liked it a lot. What I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
No, he drove me around. I was his shadow there for a long time. But he's just a weekend shoot the first deer that walks by kind of guy. And there ain't nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely not. I've said it before on here talking to other people, but can you imagine, traditions of old and talking to some old timers maybe back in the day, 60s, 70s, 80s, telling those old timers how some of us deer hunt in this country, they would probably be dumbfounded in some of the responses that some people would tell them, because back then, they really honestly did it only for meat and providing for their family and having a good time doing it with their buddies in deer camp. And the way that some people do it anymore, they would probably have a shit fit.
Oh, I mean, it's a luxury sport to a certain degree. It can be, you spend everyone likes to log how many hours they've been in the tree stand. If you made $5 an hour for that, we'd all be able to buy something else. So you're right. They'd be like, you need to get in the field and do some work.
I wish I could be, if I had a time travel machine, I would definitely go back, to the 70s or 80s or something, maybe even the 60s, and hop in a deer camp somewhere in, the UP of northern Michigan or Minnesota or Wisconsin or something like that, where those traditions really run deep up there on deer camps, and I think that would be an awesome story to tell somebody.
Absolutely.
So for you and your family, it's kind of another question that I tend to ask on here quite a bit. What's some traditions that you and your family hold each and every deer season?
Well, I'll be honest, Dad, he just don't hunt like he used to. But when I was a kid growing up, probably about till the time I was, I don't know, maybe 15, we had a muzzleloader deer camp. We always have archery, then muzzleloader, then rifle. And around here, generally, muzzleloader falls in the best time to be in the woods. And it ain't got bitter cold yet. So we'd always go camp during muzzleloader. So I remember black powder smoke, campfires, all that. And we did that every year for about a week at a time. But Dad, he's about all but quit. So the only traditions anymore are going to have to be made by me and my boy.
There you go. Kind of same thing with me. I don't hunt with my dad like I quite like I used to. We always had a tradition back in the day. I don't know why or how it even started, but our opening day gun season, we would always go to the local diner and have breakfast and look at everybody in their blaze orange getting ready to smoke the first doe that walked in, and it was just kind of cool to see everybody and hear their stories maybe and all that kind of stuff. But uh,
Yeah, Dad, like I couldn't tell you the last time I've been in the woods with my dad when he killed a deer. We've been killing them. He used to kill one. I'd go drive across the state and hunt all day, and he'd shoot one in his underwear in the backyard.
right.
But this year, finally, I talked him into going back to muzzleload hunt, and there's just an old stand we've been killing deer out of for years, and I told him I want to watch you shoot one, and I just climbed up in my saddle and hung right there behind him and watched him shoot a couple over his shoulder.
That's pretty cool, man.
It was just a 4-pointer, but man, when that buck folded, my heart was beating just like when I dropped my biggest one of this season, or worse, really, just
All right.
because you don't have that control. You're watching if someone else is doing it. You know what I mean?
Well, absolutely. It's kind of funny you say that because this year we talked about it on the podcast before this, but I was with my guy Adam Bonowitz, my neighbor, filming for him on November the 11th, and he shot about a 130-inch buck with his bow, and I filmed everything. I filmed the whole hunt entirety and everything, and after he shot that deer, I think I was shaking probably more than he was. I don't know if it was just my adrenaline going or we had finally accomplished what we had been doing for 2+ years on the filming aspect and finally getting it done with the bow on film. But I was shaking like, I don't know, I shot a 180-inch deer or something.
Absolutely.
So you talked a little bit when you sent the email over telling me a little bit about yourself. You chasing these mountain deer. What do you think the difference in between hunting mountain deer compared to hunting these Midwest corn-fed deer? What do you think the difference is, and how do you approach all that?
I'll say most of my experience in the mountains growing up, I was not necessarily building from year to year. I wasn't being a conscious deer hunter, thinking critically. We were just going to the same old tree stands, expecting. Now, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of deer with a dang rocking chair on their head come out of those woods, but there was no forethought into it. It was totally random and all that. Frankly, what makes mountain deer harder than other deer is simply the density, or the lack of density in the mountains. There's not a deer. There's just substantially less deer per acre.
Mm-hmm.
You get in the lowland, and it blew my mind, because Dad, he hauled me up there on the mountain. We hunted, and like I said, you might set 2 weeks. And now, like I said, that's probably partially from not doing any kind of reading the topography, reading this, that, and the other. Like I said, historically we just picked a spot where you could see good,
Mm-hmm.
see the most and shoot. That don't mean nothing if it's not, where the deer are actually going to go. So,
Right.
but once I got my own set of wheels and started branching out and going places, because Dad just wanted to go to the private land because he didn't have to deal with anybody else or whatever. And so we went out there and did the same thing for about 15 years. And I was all but burned out of deer hunting. It sucks to sit 2 weeks and not see nothing.
I know how that feels.
I was branching out to other pursuits and whatnot, but as soon as I started moving around, and especially once I made it to college and got around some of that public land that I was in, my eyes really opened up to, holy crap, I'm seeing 5 deer every other time I go. And, whereas when you're having a deer come through every 2 weeks, you better be on your game.
Right.
I will say that taught me to no hesitation, think fast, take your time in a hurry is what Dad said. Take your time in a hurry,
That's awesome.
But being able to see multiple deer a day and be like, holy crap, that's not what deer hunting is. I can see all these deer if I just go across the county and get in the scrub down by the river, versus up on the mountain. And that's when I really started wanting to deer hunt a little bit more. But I never did get into the trying to chase a big deer. I started killing deer a whole lot more, killing as many as I wanted to, but not big ones. But
Mm-hmm.
this year is the year where all those gears are finally starting to. I really enjoyed it. It kind of happened accidentally a little bit. I mean, I halfway thought I was calculating a plan and working, and I coincidentally, a few follow up hunts to killing my 2 bucks I killed this year, I did some of the same things and had some encounters with, I don't know, 120, 130, maybe up to 140. I think in 2 days of sitting, I saw 4 bucks well over 100 inches, and two of them I missed. So, and that was on a bonus buck opportunity. So,
Mm-hmm.
I was riding that wave, of success, and then I got brought right down back to earth, baby, watching that one over the back and one under the belly, 2 different bucks.
Oh man, to kind of go back on what you said a little bit as far as like hunting the same stuff over and over again, and you kind of getting tired of that. I can attest to that a little bit. When I was younger, I would say in high school, maybe even a little bit after high school, you don't learn to read sign or even really know what's going on per se in the deer woods when you do that, because you're just walking in. You're probably walking the same path in. You're getting in that hang on that you put on. You've been up for 5 years or whatever, and you don't really know what's going on compared to like what you're saying. You're diving in on public. You're scouting your way in. You're scouting your way out. You may see, you may walk a trail in and see a scrape and say, oh, that wasn't there 2 days ago. This buck is moving through the area. He's probably checking some bedding or whatever. I think doing that and being mobile per se can help you read whitetail sign a lot better than just walking in and hopping in the same old stand over and over again.
Yeah, no, I mean, in a season span, the handful of deer that are living in wherever the radius of your stand, it's predictable. I swear, even sometimes I know the difference between the weekend and the weekdays.
All right.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like, this is one thing I saw my dad do and my grandpa as well. They had success in a spot one time, and then they hunted that spot like a fool. They wouldn't go nowhere else. And I'm like, that's one moment in time. That's one deer's choice of current place to live. You killed him. Now he's got a son or two that might copy him, but that's no guarantee.
Right.
Especially on those opening day shuffles when there's so many bodies in the woods.
Oh yeah.
And those deer getting blown off their path. I mean, you had success. Now, sometimes I do have trees where I can go to every single year. The deer do the same thing. I do have those places, but you hunted a few dozen times, a dozen times, and it's just not happening. Well, move on.
Absolutely. And it's kind of funny that I say that and say that I'm kind of following the same path as you. I almost want to work my way in and check everything out. But the buck that I shot this year was in a lock on that I've had in that same spot since, I don't know, 2015, 2016. But it was one of those days I was supposed to do something else. I was supposed to go film for a buddy that morning, and so he switched the plans up on me a little bit. His boy was sick and he couldn't go, so it was kind of me throw it together last minute. I was like, I want to go to the spot. I hadn't been there for about a week and a half when I took Zach from Midstate Outdoors when he was down from Michigan. And I got so lucky, man. I got up in the stand, saw a ton of deer, saw deer the whole time I was there, and then it was just that special time of the year that I knew it was the right time to be in that spot. And then next thing I know, I got a 130-inch deer in my lap and in the bed of my truck. So it all worked out a lot better than I wanted it to. But it's always cool when something comes together like that, kind of unexpected for sure.
Yeah, well, and this is something I always say. A lot of people, I've done well or whatever, successful harvest and this, that, and the other. People ask me how I've done this or that or whatever. And I just say, well, the only thing I can figure is that I was in the woods with a gun or a bow. And that's the most consistent to my kids. It's like sometimes there's just no rhyme or reason to it. You just got to be relentless and keep going. I'll tell you, I've had my best days mostly. It's that last day when you just don't want to get out of bed and you force yourself to go. the stars line up, and it's just getting there and being there, and hours logged. I mean, you can help yourself a lot by thinking critically, but
Absolutely. I got a couple
grind.
buddies that are kind of getting into it now that they've saw me and a couple other buddies into the sport, and they're interested, and they've been a few times, and they've almost both said the same thing to me and my buddy Ryan, who helped start Blue River bow hunting. They always say, "You guys are so lucky. You guys always kill big bucks, or you're always on big bucks." You know, my response to that is, "We're in the woods as much as humanly possible. Our wives hate us in the months of October and November because we're never home. You know, we may be coming home and it's to go to bed because we're so tired from hunting all day and we're ready to do it again. You know, I probably lose weight in hunting season because I don't really. I mean, I'm always on the go. I'm always doing something." You know, like you said, relentless. We're there. It doesn't matter. Maybe not always in the same woods, but if there's a day open or a time open for me to be in the woods, I'm there. So we're putting as much time as humanly possible into it. Of course, we're going to get on big deer or deer in general. You know, they think you can just hop in a stand and kill a deer your first time or second time or third time out in the woods, and it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, no, that the L word, it might rub me the wrong way sometimes. Like, you don't know what's behind that rack. You don't know what's behind that turkey. You don't know about the thousands of hours just empty-handed failure after failure. I mean,
Oh,
if you,
absolutely.
if you want to be lucky, you got to be a friend of failure. You know what I mean?
Oh,
You just got
absolutely.
to grin and keep going and say, "Well, thank you for teaching me what you taught me today." Keep grinding. You know,
Absolutely. I think I've learned that more turkey hunting the last few years than deer hunting for sure. Seems like there was like a 6 to 7 year window where I killed a bird every year. I got super lucky on every hunt. I mean, yes, I had the knowledge to do so, but then I just went on this like bad spell and I couldn't get on a bird. I missed a couple birds. You know, it was always something that played out for me during the turkey woods, and then to finally get it done last year up in Michigan, man, it was like a monkey off my back. It felt like the biggest, baddest bird I've ever killed, just because it had been so long since I'd killed one.
hey, and that does sweeten it all. The failure behind it. I mean, if you just walk out and blew one away the first time, every time, it just there's no gratification. At least not to me. You know.
Absolutely, I'm with you on that, buddy. So you talked about starting to hunt the public land when you went to college and all that, and you tell me that you're basically all public land now, and you use waterways to get in and out. Tell us a little bit about the public land stuff and the way that you approach it.
Well, it's a pretty simple approach. Uh, I accidentally my this really doesn't have much to do with it, but my degree is actually says conservation of biodiversity,
Hmm.
and well, that's what you got to focus on. There'll be so much more game at any diversity hub. You just want anywhere where two or three types of vegetation come together. Prefer, around here, a diversity is the backside of a cow pasture. You know, if you've got 5,000 acres of woods and one cow pasture, that's your diversity. Okay, you get close to that, and then you look for the most significant piece of topography, and that's all I'm literally doing is finding somewhere where there's two or three different types of vegetation happening and finding the tightest choke point. And I'll tell you what, I probably got no less. I mean, I probably got 500 pins dropped in different little spots all around. And I've probably been to a third of them at this point. And I see deer in all those little choke points. I mean, I know a lot of people want to camp out on the food or right
Hmm.
on that straight, but if I can split the difference between all of those three things, that's been successful for me, and I haven't tried anything else. I've been seeing deer, shooting deer. I've been doing that for the past. I remember when that all clicked when I came back home from college, and it was an opening day muzzleloader hunt. I hadn't had any time to scout, but I dropped me a pin on the map that I'd never set foot into a day in my life. Took my kayak in there to it, got in. I sat there till 11 o'clock. You could hear people driving up top, road hunting. Um, everybody shuffling, leaving the woods and all that. About 11:30, here comes big old Dandy through there. He comes through where I like to hunt. There's lots of hemlocks, just gnarly, dark hollers. Just, he dips under. You've seen hemlocks where the branches overhang real low.
Mm-hmm.
He went under the hemlock and he popped right out under that hemlock and looked right up at me. And that muzzleloader clicked, and he ran up the hill. I don't know what it was, but I'm just shaking there. I'm a mess, and
Mm-hmm.
I can still barely see him at the top of the hill. And get another primer on, and something spooked him right back down to me, and I shot him again. But the point of it is he cruised right through that topo when people were shuffling around in the woods. I've killed so many deer on public land in good topo around lunchtime. When I call it the midday shuffle. I don't know if other people call it that or.
I don't necessarily call it that, but I know exactly what you mean. I've outlasted quite a few people around some private that I have, and just like you said about lunchtime, they're hopping down to go get them some food. I was smart enough to eat breakfast or bring a snack in with me to keep me there longer. And they push them. They may be hunting near bedding or a fence row or something, and they're just pushing them right into where I'm at. And I've seen a ton of deer from 11 to 3 or in that midday area. Some of it had to do with rut activity, but a lot of that is, like you said, midday shuffle, guys getting out of the stand pushing deer around.
Yep.
Or maybe they killed one and they're going
they
to
shot that 4-pointer to come through and they're tickled pink, and hey, they push Big Daddy over where we are. But I'm sure we pushed a deer getting out or whatever, vice versa, and all that. But that's how we kind of hunted when I was a kid. And now that I'm hunting on my own and doing my own thing, and now that I have the desire, I thought it was crazy to go chase big bucks. I'm like, man, I want to go shoot ducks every 5 minutes, not sit patiently like a statue for daylight till dark. But now that's what I'm doing. I'm sitting there. I was so miserable on that last hunt. It was 19 degrees with a wind chill, and I was underdressed. And I couldn't afford to move. Every time I moved, I got cold. Until that big old buck came in right at dark, and I missed him. But
I did get the chance Thanksgiving morning last week to go duck hunting. I hadn't duck hunted since last year. It's something I normally do after our deer season, or really, honestly, right before our deer season comes out. But it's tagged out, or I just want to switch it up for the day or whatever. Thanksgiving morning, we killed 12 mallards and a gadwall, and that's some of the best hunting I've had in a while, just because it's so much different than deer hunting. We went out there and we're all laughing and giggling and telling stories and shooting a bunch of ducks. Man, it was a blast.
Dude, I just come back from one. I was down at the bottom of Kentucky Lake, and we killed a 5-man limit and had to leave them flying.
Oh,
I just was like, what? And after all those days of freezing, not seeing nothing, I had a bruise. I had to pick my shots because my shoulder was hurting.
That's awesome. That's a good day shooting right there. Yeah. We had about 40 mallards land in on us before we could legally shoot. So we had to kind of pick what we wanted to do once we could shoot. And they were all kind of went down creek of us. We were hunting a creek because all the ponds and lakes were froze up. So they were hitting that creek, and they absolutely just piled in there. And they just come over top of us all morning long, and sitting there, we're already set up. And once we could finally shoot, the guy to our far right shot, and they all lifted up, but they all came right past us. So we shot a bunch of them, and then I don't know if they wanted in that hole just that bad, or there was that many birds in the area, but they just kept coming back, singles, doubles, singles, doubles, singles, doubles. It was awesome, man. I think I shot about a box of shells.
I don't want to tell you how many times I shot.
It's a good time though. What about you seem pretty old school on the deer hunting stuff, which I love, by the way. What about your scent game, scent control? What do you do as far as it comes to scent control?
Well, it's probably not a very popular opinion, but I really don't do much to it other than watch which way it's blowing.
You may not say that's a popular opinion, but you're probably about the 5th or 6th person in a row I've had on this podcast that has the exact answer that you just answered.
I say as long as you are respiring, your pores are letting out a little bit of hot air, your breath a little hot air, and there's no stopping it. You can minimize it, but
Mm-hmm.
I just think I don't fool with it no more. I will say in early season I keep a bottle of spray simply to cool myself down.
Right.
Spray my hair, wet my hat, wet my shirt. Like if it, early September, late September, early season hunt,
Right.
I will wet myself down because sweat stinks that much more.
Right. So Tennessee, you guys just started doing the velvet hunts, right? Or has that always been a thing there?
It's been in the past 3 to 5 years. I can't remember exactly when, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's they do that velvet hunt, and frankly, I've never participated in it. I could. I know places where deer they're the most predictable they'll ever be.
Right.
They're in the backside of the field 30 minutes before dark every day. But it just don't scratch the same itch for me.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I get
I
it.
haven't never even tried.
We went. I went with a group of guys to Kentucky. This was like their 11th year in a row going or something. That first weekend, the Labor Day weekend or whatever, their archery opener for Kentucky. And I get what you're saying. It doesn't scratch the same itch, but they made it so much fun that it makes me want to go back. It was as hottest I've ever been deer hunting, though. I can tell you that much.
Absolutely. That's half of the. I mean, I don't care to handle meat when it's warm, but just the being hot, guaranteed mosquitoes. At least in early October, you got a 50-50 chance of not getting bit by mosquitoes if it's just 2 degrees cool enough to keep them still. You know what I mean? But
yeah, you got a thermocell is a must.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the gear you use. So when you go into these public lands to hang and hunt, is it a climber? Are you doing the sticks and a lock on saddle? What are you using?
My climber is hanging about 25 feet up in the tree. It's probably bamboozling people when they walk by it if they ever walk that far. They probably think somebody fell out. I left it up there. I climbed up with sticks and hung the climber in just to treat it as a lock on, because I switched. Let's see, I had dug about a half a pound of ginseng and I sold it off, and I said I got to turn it into something I'm going to use. I ain't buying gas. I ain't buying groceries. And so I went and I bought a Lone Wolf assault and sticks, and I used it and retired my climber. I used it a few times, and I'm like, man, as much as I've spent on this. And it's still light, don't get me wrong. The stand itself is light and the sticks are fairly light. What got me is still having the profile dragging behind me, because I ain't walking logging roads, I ain't walking trails. It's scrub, just purely holly thickets, laurel thickets, and it's a pain. You know how a climber hangs on everything. And plus, it weighs 30 pounds or however many,
Right.
So I retired it. I switched to the Lone Wolf, and I still wasn't satisfied. Of course, I've been seeing the saddle stuff for years. I'm like, I'm never going to do that. That's goofy, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to hang. I'm going to go scout, hang lock-ons, and hunt them lock-ons. That seemed like what I wanted to do, but I got on Amazon and ordered a rock climbing harness. And then I took one of my Lone Wolf sticks, and I put the seat to the tree stand on the stick instead of on the tree stand. I cut my stick to about that. Well, I've got it sitting right here if you want to see it.
Let's see it.
It's just a climbing. It's just like any old platform. So I'm saddle hunting more or less, but just a little cheaper, I think. But
yeah, that's a pretty unique.
That's what I'm doing now. It fits in my pack. I'm not even one sticking. I'm just climbing with just the platform. That's all I take is a platform, a tether rope, and a harness. I think it weighs maybe 7 pounds.
So what you're getting? What about?
I weighed it once upon a time.
So what you're getting about 6-7 foot off the ground?
Oh no, I inch up the tree. Like I'll step up on the platform and put the rope up as high as I can and pull it down tight and hang in the saddle. And I'll reach down and I'll move my platform up 2 feet at a time.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying now.
Yeah, I can climb as high as I want. I keep a second tether rope so I can skip branches. And like I said, literally it fits inside my backpack. Just it.
That's awesome.
And that's what changed it for me is I can fit my rope in there. My platform fits in there. It's no wider than I am, and the harness itself fits in there. And that is the game changingest thing I ever had. Just being able to, without a hitch, go from point A to C. What I say, like when you go in blind on public and you've never walked it once, you're never taking the most efficient route ever. Right. You're not seeing it in daylight. You're not seeing the brush. You're not seeing that deadfall. And you know how time-consuming that is. I call it blundering in. If you got a big climber on and it takes you 3 times as much, you're sweating 5 times as much. And that literally changed. That made me a big buck hunter. I'll spend time in the woods. The last buck I killed was 1 3/4 miles deep. And I'm no, well, no, not the last one, the last big one I killed. I'm no picture of physical fitness. And for me to be able to do that before daylight, my life's changed. I'm going to be doing that the rest of my life.
That's awesome.
I'm glad I made the switch because I might just be saying, hunting them deer, that ain't for me. But just this year has been I say it's renewed my interest, reignited the flame, and it's on.
Oh, I guarantee it. So, question: you said that you were a 1 3/4 miles back into the woods, and you killed that buck. What are you using to get that buck out of the woods?
Well, this last one that I got, I drug it all the way out, and it's the biggest deer I've ever killed. And, the only reason I did that was so I could get a picture of it whole with my son. It's the biggest buck I killed since he was born, and I said I'm almost as tough as I am dumb. So let's get to dragging. And I drug it 30 yards at a time, 30-yard bursts. Just leaned back into it, pulled it backward, and 30-yard burst. I'd go back and get my pack, walk it up 30 yards, and just don't think about it, just do it. And drug it back to the boat, and floated it back to the truck. I mean, I was 1 mile in on the boat and 1 3/4 miles on foot.
Man, that's a haul there. I hosted a public land deer camp in southern Indiana this past October, and a guy that came down to hunt with us that I actually work with, he shot a good buck on the Saturday that we were there, and he sends me a pin to where he's at, and he's 1.78 miles from the truck. And I'm like, oh, God, this is going to be fun. So me and another guy went back there, help him recover the deer. We get it gutted. And then the hike was on, man. And we tried to, use the pin on X to see what the shortest route out of the woods would be with the deer. Because we actually had somebody had a harness that we could hook it up to the deer and just pull the deer. And next thing I know, we probably got it about a half mile or so from the road, and I said, hey, let me pick your guys' stuff up. Let me take it to the road. I'll come back get you, and we'll get this thing out of there. I didn't realize it was straight uphill. And when I say straight uphill, I'm talking probably some of the mountain stuff that you used to hunt or still hunt or whatever. It was straight up and down. And I sent we had a group chat going on with everybody that was there, so I sent everybody a pin to where we were at, and it was so cool to see the responses that we got. Everybody came and helped drag this thing out, but we got to a certain point where we couldn't drag it out. We had to end up, and it's the first time I've ever been a part of anything like that. We quartered it out with in-game bags and everything. Scott Thompson from Texas, he drove 12, 13 hours to come hunting with us down there and come hang out and camp with us. Super cool dude. He said, I've done this before, and I actually have the game bags on me. And we looked at Jeremy, who shot the buck, and he's like, yeah, I'm not going to mount it. We can go ahead and cut it up. You don't even have to worry about, caping it or anything. And we quartered this thing. So Scott quartered it out and put it in bags. We all grabbed a bag and hiked up out of there. One of the coolest things I've ever been a part of is as far as deer hunting, because everything – I'm getting into it a lot more as far as hunting public land, but a lot of the stuff that I hunt 90% of the time is private land, and if I kill something, I'm able to almost drive right up to where I'm at. I don't necessarily have to drag it that far. And to be a part of something like that was super cool, man. Great buck. I would say he's probably in the 130, 135 range. And he had like a chocolate rack, and it was just a really cool experience. And for everybody to be a part of that down there at deer camp and everybody help out, man, it was freaking awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Last year was the first year we started. Me and my one buddy I hunt with, that we've been buddies since we're 4 years old. He's like my brother. We switched to the saddles at the same time last year, and we decided to start going into these places where it wasn't possible to get a four-wheeler into. It's like, nobody else is going off in there, because 95% of people around here, if you see them on public land, they're probably not 400 or 500 yards from their truck parked, or half the time you can see them, But we were getting in some places where it's just steep, rocky, nasty, and that I had come back from a hunt in Colorado maybe a year or two before, and I still had my game bags, and I threw them in my pack. My buddy plugged one, and that's what we did. There was no thinking about it, no nothing. It was, we're busting it down. That's our only, it's just physically impossible.
Basically.
And I tagged out, in October, but that same little choke point down there in public, he's tagged out now with his rifle. So I mean, it's a producer, but you're gonna cut them up and pack them out, or that's your only choice.
So you just touched on it, going out to Colorado. What exactly did you do out there? Elk or bear or what?
Yeah, we went elk hunting. It was my very first time. I said, once I get out of school and get employed and get enough funds and all that, I said, I'm doing it. My bucket list is a screaming bull elk. I want to see his eyelashes and smell his breath, and then
right.
send it.
Yeah.
And we did that, and you never, if you'll admit it to yourself, you'll never realize what a little greeny weenie you are coming from deer hunting to hitting the Rocky Mountains. And that was a very humbling experience. And oddly enough, after the first couple blunders, we did some really rookie greenhorn stuff, trying to do. You read the topo maps at home. Well, they just can't exaggerate the lines enough for out there.
I bet.
I was wanting to take a shortcut, which I guess there's no such thing as a shortcut if you really think about it in those mountains. But I was trying to get us up into billy goat territory where the trees were gone, and over to an alpine lake as our base camp where we could sit there and glass, and the meadows below. That's where the elk were. It took us a couple of days to actually get in there with them, but we probably wasted 4 days blundering. We had fun. Now we shot a bunch of grouse. I got my small game tag because I was like, that's half of my bucket list is shooting grouse with my bow.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
We snuffed it. I mean, we flushed 8 behind our base camp. And, buddy, we ate good. My buddies, I said they're Boy Scouts. They had all the freeze-dried stuff. We had burritos. We had Chinese food, just all sorts of stuff. And every single meal we supplemented with the grouse and brook trout. And because
awesome.
You go in them little trickling streams, every cast you're pulling out a 6 to 8 inch brook trout. So
that's awesome. Talking about hunting out west, I've never been out west hunting either, and the elk thing definitely it's definitely on that bucket list for sure. But for some reason I don't know why the muleys have more of my attention than the elk do. I know, seeing, like you said, seeing a big old screaming bull, you want to see his eyelashes and his breath. That does sound badass, but there's something about those big velvet muleys that just kind of get my attention, man. Them things are absolute giants, man.
Yeah, no, I actually, I've got a buddy, he guides sheep and moose in Alaska, and he's always sending me pics I'm jealous of there. But he goes every year to Montana and kills a pile of antelope, and right just a week or two ago, he was sending me pictures of mule deer. I'm immediately quizzing him. I don't know why, but I've never had any interest in them that much. But those pigs, there's like 6 to 8 inches of snow. I don't know. I think I got bit by. I got to do it once, and I already know somebody who knows right where they're living. So
There you go.
that's half the battle, ain't it?
For sure. I definitely want to get on the muleys. I don't know what state that I would go to. Obviously, I'd have to do a ton of research as far as having preference points and all that stuff. But I got a good buddy down there in Texas, Kurt Box. He goes to Arizona quite a bit. And he was actually, it's funny we're talking about that. He actually sent me a picture, a trail cam picture of a freaking giant muley. I don't even want to guess a score because I'd probably be way off, but just an absolute pig of a mule deer. And he said that was on his bucket list. He was headed to Arizona chasing muleys. I'm like, man, I'm so jealous because I'm tagged out here in Indiana, and I don't even know if I'll ever get to pick the bow back up again this season.
Yeah, yeah. This year I've kind of entertained the possibility of going out of state a little bit. If I can consistently tag out in bow season, then why not go? And if I tagged out here, I don't care if I kill one anywhere else. I just more than killing them, I just want to go out and experience something new. That's the biggest reason I switched to public land is you can literally never hunt the same place twice. And just see. I like watching the sun come up somewhere new as often as possible. Now, if I see something good and worth coming back for, well, I'll go there. But it's nice to bounce around.
For sure, that's what I did last year. Actually, I tagged out the last weekend of October, and I actually had I think it was the first week of October or November off of work already off, and I was like, let's go somewhere. Let's figure this out. And we had to figure it out quickly. We ended up going to Ohio. We wanted to find a public land that we could hunt and we could also stay there, that like maybe had open spots that we could tent camp or whatever. Ended up doing that for a whole week in Coshocton County, Ohio, and it was a very humbling experience for sure. There was days where I woke up in my tent and there was frost on my pillow. It was so cold. I slept like in my deer hunting bibs. I slept in some of that stuff. We had figure out some of the campfire situation, try to keep ourselves warm. We drove into town and got us some goodies to cook up every night, cooking deer steaks with onions and peppers and stuff. And it was just kind of cool to camp the whole week, and then meeting people that had traveled just like we had, and it was just really cool. And I want to do that in as many states as I can, I think, for whitetails. I love duck hunting and turkey hunting as much as everybody else does, but it doesn't scratch that itch like whitetails do. And I want to experience whitetail hunting all over the country. I want to go to every state if that's even possible.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
So we're talking about gear. We talked about your stand. You switched to the saddle. What about your bow? What kind of bow are you toting around?
Oh, man. Let's see. Years ago, have you ever seen those stores that take all the Amazon returns?
Yeah.
I found a Diamond Infinite Edge there, which, that's more or less a starter bow, kind of grow with you bow or whatever.
Yeah.
I found it there for they had it for $100 on the shelf, and the serving string had come unwound. And I told that manager, I said, I'm gonna have to get this reserved. Blah blah blah. I got it for $75. It shoots 310 IBO. It's plenty fast, and that's all I've been slinging them with for I don't know a long time.
That's awesome.
I reserved the string myself.
That's even better. That's awesome. I saw a picture on your Go Wild. Did you shoot on with a longbow?
Yes, sir. I surely did. I've been shooting them things since I was a kid, just, out in the yard and stuff. And
right.
I don't know. I killed 2 does, that one big buck, and I killed about a 300-pound pig, all with my compound bow. And I was like, man, I've been having a great season with the bow. I've owned that particular stick bow. It was a gift since 2009. And I've shot the fire out of it. I can hit what I'm aiming at. It's just a lot slower than that. And but yeah, I told my buddy, I said, if there was ever a time to go take it, it'd be now. And I don't know, about 9 o'clock that morning, I sent him a picture of a heart with a hole in it, and I said, well, it happened.
That's awesome. So what kind of Did it give you like a sense of accomplishment shooting it with a traditional bow like that?
Oh, I mean, I wrote it up on my Go Wild post. But it literally was just it was fulfilling a childhood dream because
Mm-hmm.
I've been shooting them like that and fantasizing about it. I've romped around with it in the woods, hoping a nice yearling would bounce out in front of me and I could do it. But that little spot I'm sitting at, it's real tight. I've probably killed a dozen deer in it at this point. None of them have been over a 20-yard shot. I said, well, if there's ever a place to take a stick bow, it's that one. About 70% of the time, the deer literally walk under the tree stand.
That's awesome.
It's a choke point between a creek and some very tall bluffs on the backside of some large green fields. And no exaggeration, there's 6 different deer trails within bow range of that stand. And but they always pick the one right under me, and you can't hear them because it's in the hemlocks. The hemlocks, there's no leaves. You're just in needles. The only
Right.
thing you can count on in those woods is a tiny, tiny snap of a twig. And I heard it directly below me, and I didn't even look. I mean, my dad told me, don't waste no time looking if you ain't got something to do about it. You got to get your gun first, then look. Get your bow first, then look.
Yeah.
Because, half the time it's a split-second opportunity, and you snooze, you lose. And anyways, I heard that snap, and I reach and get my bow, and I start swiveling in my seat. I never stood up. I shot it sitting down with the stick bow.
That's
And,
awesome.
so I swiveled and turned myself as far as I could, just scooting on my butt. And I just seen him coming out of my peripheral right under me. He was right against the tree I was hanging in. And he took about 2 more steps. And you can't think about it with the stick bow. You just yank it back, anchor, and let her fly. I think he was about 5 yards away, just, once you do the math triangulating, you know what I mean? And,
Yeah, right.
but I watched that arrow. Like I said, you can't think about it. Let it go. And I just watched that arrow slither right in his armpit and seat. And as soon as that arrow quit moving forward, he ripped a grunt. I'd never heard a deer grunt when I shot it. But he ripped a grunt. He probably ran. I just heard him. It sounded like he hit the ground 5 times running through the hemlocks in a crash and a thud. And I was like, well, that sounds too good to be true, And
Right.
I gave him his time or whatever and shimmied down the tree. And when I was walking up, he was behind an immense old, a dead hemlock tree so big, probably 5 or 6 feet in circumference. And
Dang.
it fell over on its side. And I could see the tops of his antlers standing up just like this. And I could see his tail under the low down log. And, I'm thinking, holy crap, he's still alive, So I put that root ball between me and him. I sat there for 10 minutes just staring at him. I did not see a single movement or anything. I'm like, this ain't the first time I've seen one dead with his head leaned against a tree. And sure enough, I come around that root ball, and he's laying there dead as a rock. But the icing on the cake is he was dead against an old rub that was healed over.
Oh, that's awesome.
About a 4-inch around tree.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, your shot placement's definitely super key when shooting a traditional bow like that.
Yeah, it's a 45-pound draw. I do, I'm shooting full-length cedar arrows, and I've got some 200 grain old school glue-on grizzlies that it did the trick. It went and it stuck about a 1/2 inch through his offside shoulder. It almost, if I'd have had 50 pounds, it probably would have exited.
That's awesome, man. That's a pretty cool story. I like that. The reason why I looked you up on Go Wild to message you to hear some stories, I actually had Derek Tolles on from Go Wild, and he was talking about him and Mike coming down and hooking up with you and doing some hunting down there. So I want to hear it. What's it like hunting with old Mike Larson?
Oh man, it was a blast. We when we first got together and whatnot, everybody's, you just getting taking everybody's temperature, seeing
Right.
getting a feel for everybody. But man, I can't say the last time I really hit it off that good with just anybody. We by the day 2, we were cutting up. like we knowed each other our whole lives, and just
That's awesome.
it's good time, really good times. I know Mike, he's got gobs more experience than me and Derek, but he let us talk and say our ideas and all that, and we communicated well. Hunting, we didn't butt heads. Have really, we had a legit. I mean, we spent more time laughing than we did. Like if we would have not been cutting up so much, we'd have probably had a better chance killing turkeys. But
That's awesome.
our first little deal was a bust because I was mixing my fuel too rich in my boat, and it just wouldn't want to start for us. And I'm like, boys, I don't want to. I can make it start, but I can't guarantee it will when we're however many miles off on the lake. And
Right.
so we did a little scramble. That was a pretty. I apologized to them boys that whole time. I said because like I said, you're blundering in that first time. You don't know how good it's going to be.
Right.
That turned into a dang armadillo chase. Literally, Mike chased it like full sprint, chased an armadillo, and I'll never. That image is burned forever in my mind.
We've talked about it before, like me and Adam on here talking, but in the moment you're like, man, this freaking blows. I didn't mean for this to happen. Obviously, you want everything to go so smooth, and then you look back on it later after everything's, you've gone through everything, and it's like, man, that was such a good time. We had such fun together that day or whatever. Something always happens, and you turn, a bad thing like that into a good memory,
Oh yeah, and to top it off, after the bushwhacking in, it was miserable. I ain't gonna lie, it was miserable. It was like overgrown privet on the edge of the lake. You couldn't see 5 feet in front. I was like, but we got to get to this field. We got to just drop a pin on the backside of a field. You can do that around here. Just get close to a dang field, and there's going to be a turkey or two. I mean, that's just kind of how our population is. And if we would have been disciplined, like after all that bushwhacking and all that crap, if we would have just we were hitting a call standing there, which we all know better than that, but it was probably close to 11 o'clock. It was hot, just not feeling. I killed most of my turkeys midday, but we was just kind of burnt out and beat from the walk in and blah blah blah. We had 2 jakes run us over while we were standing there cutting up. If we had sat down against a tree, there'd have been 2 flopping birds.
That's awesome. Your turkey population in Tennessee hit a little bit of a decline, right? Like you guys went from being able to shoot like 4 birds to 2 now.
Yeah, that's kind of sad. I've killed 4 birds every year since I was 16 up until last year. They dropped it down to 3.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, last year was the first year I didn't kill all 3 of my birds. Not saying I couldn't have. I held off on a lot of 40-yard shots because, again, I like to count them hairs on their head and all that. But frankly, I could have killed a turkey when we were all 3 hunting, but I wanted to hold out because Mike gave me a hard time. I said, Derek was sitting right here. Mike was maybe 15 feet over to my right. And just the way the land laid, them birds, we got in there with them on the day 2, got in there about 8 o'clock, one hammered, and we knew to get in there and go live with him, hang out with him until he broke loose. He stayed with a bunch of jakes back and forth in the private field. We was right on the property line,
Right.
And, we was holding back a decent ways or whatever, but he's out in the private field and we're in the public woods, story of our life, and they were going to leave and I can gobble on the diaphragm. And I was holding out for that. You never knowing if that's, you never get second guess yourself more than when you're turkey hunting,
Right.
just
Absolutely.
Next best move is. But anyways, I gobbled at him a couple times, and then it was 2 super jakes and a young gobbler, and they marched right in, got right there with the root ball. They had all 3 of their heads lined up, and I told Mike, I said, I could have shot them all 3 in one shot. He's like, well, why didn't you? I said, well, but he's giving me a hard time about that, but we had a really good time, and we tangoed with those birds in a tiny, maybe not even a 2-acre spot, and always 10 feet across the property line. That's just, I'd say there's a lot of boys who would have blasted them things like that, but that shows, who the kind of people they are. And
absolutely.
I won't shoot anything like that. I hope most people won't, but there is a few. But man,
there's a few that would pull the trigger for sure.
It was it was frustrating. It was real. And, them boys traveled quite a ways and whatnot. You always want the people who's coming with you to have success, especially they travel halfway across the country. But
Right.
that's hunting. I'll just tell them next time I'll take them to a little bit more of a honey hole. That one was just a pure pin on the map. I know there's turkeys here. Let's go. But we might go somewhere where I got a little bit more historical knowledge.
There you go. Well, buddy, I appreciate you coming on and talking some deer hunting with me and telling some stories about you and chasing some mountain deer. But where can everybody find you at on social media?
Go wild. That's it.
Absolutely.
That's the only thing I've ever fooled with.
I love the Go Wild community. I shout them out every episode. Some great guys. I love Braden and Brad and Derek and everybody involved over there. They're all really nice people. Had a great time with them at Send It Slam. Can't wait to hang out with everybody again down there. And if you're listening, give us a rate and review on the podcast. If you're on YouTube, hit that like button. And, follow us, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Go Wild. You can find me on LinkedIn as a podcast host. But everybody have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you later.